Ecstatic Bliss. Secrets to living a juicy life. Identity shifting is a core teaching nowadays in spirituality to shift your identity and become someone new and experience a different reality, and therefore also a base concept for shifting your reality, for manifestation, for, in a way, playing this game on a more conscious level. And in fact, I always say there are 4 phases of identity shifting. The first one is unconscious. We always have an identity. That gives us a name, a title, a persona, and so forth. And then comes this phase of conscious identity shifting, where we feel like, actually, I can define who I am. I can name myself something and be that, play with that. And then comes the following step of soul-aligned identity, what I teach mainly, to align your identity with soul, truth, and essence and love, because conscious identity shifting not always means it's in pure intentions, but can be very ego-driven, which is a phase, and that's not to judge, but it is a phase of ego-based identity shifting often first. And after this soul-aligned identity, which I feel are more and more collectively journeying towards to live a soul-aligned identity here on Earth, then at the very late stage, maybe in this lifetime, maybe in another lifetime, it's much more about unraveling about this identification. So to make yourself empty of all identifications and labels, because of course, all labels limit yourself in a way. So identity gives you a framework, or your human avatar, your soul, a framework to operate in, to see this reality from one perspective, or see existence, this vastness of existence, from a very specific angle, from a very specific point of view. And we are always in one identity. Sometimes we can switch automatically in one identity when we are at work, and one with friends, one with family, one when we are alone. And there's also a fluidity in a way of identities, and connected to that, to archetypes that we embody, maybe the role of the mother and father, the role of the friend, the role of the daughter, the role of the colleague, the role of whatever job you have. So there's a fluidity of multiple identities you currently embody, or that your soul inhabits. And in this way, I feel, that's why I named it that way, identities are like costumes for the soul. Like, okay, in this area of my life, or in this scenario, I wear this costume to experience that scenario from this perspective and have my realizations from that. Sometimes even literally, a lot of jobs have a costume, so to say, even literally the clothes you wear and the makeup you wear and the however you speak, you talk, the lingo, the terminology you use. And in this sense, it's very funny to use this term, identities are costumes, because this is how your soul plays here on Earth through different characters, through different scenarios and storylines. And I wish you to enjoy taking on this view, because it gives you much more space and capacity to enjoy what you're going through. Same as I had with switching between soul and human avatar is here a little bit this is meant by that there's a soul, your soul is in no identity, it is identityless, so to say. And then when it descends into form, in this human form, it needs an identity to operate on the planet. And by giving yourself a certain identity, you operate in a certain framework, as I said, and a certain frequency, in a certain persona, and have a specific outcome as a reality you experience. To switch your costume also means to switch perspective, to switch reality, to switch a certain degree of whole existence that evolves around you. And this switching of identities happens very automatic and, as a next layer, very conscious sometimes. And you don't really have to worry about it, but you can shape and shift and adapt to it often, to a certain amount at least. Sometimes you are limited by other influencing factors. So it's not always, okay, you can instantly switch to one identity. Then sometimes it just remains as a concept in your mind. Except in your mind, without embodiment, different layers. My complexity comes in here because you can live an identity in your imagination without embodying it. What I mean by these costumes, obviously, is to really embody that identity on multiple layers, really holistically seen. And then if you have experienced that, your soul has experienced enough of that identity, naturally it pushes the human avatar to think something needs to change. Something doesn't fit anymore. Something doesn't feel aligned. And that is the push into a next identity or your next level identity. So identity then is outgrown. You come into this in-between state to be reborn in a new identity. So it's always dying and being reborn. The butterfly constantly, the caterpillar, the cocoon, the butterfly. It's a constant cycling through different identities, through different costumes, so to say, throughout life. And each one of these identities, these costumes, serves a purpose. And oftentimes also these identities are connected so that the next level identity builds upon the last identities. It nourishes, it draws from the past identities. And for some, it even means like extremes. Some live in extremes. Okay, this is the identity of, for example, living in the bare minimum, spiritual life. The concept of I have to be minimalist and I have to offer everything for free or volunteer a lot, karma yoga, and so forth. And then maybe that identity is outdated and you have learned everything from that and transition into the opposite of I want to earn a lot of money. I want to enjoy the material life. I want to indulge in it. I want glamour and glitter and lifestyle. That can be because your soul chose, I want to experience these extremes. And what I invite you also here, what I invite oftentimes is not to judge, because on a higher perspective, everything is equally valid. So not judging the identities or realities that others live and what you came here to live or to explore. Not to judge it, and also not to get attached or too detached from it. Not to attach so much on your identity that you feel like only this is truth for you. And also not to detach too much that you feel like a floating, whatever vibrating being, which you are in a way. But if you're here as a human being, this is how your soul experiences life, as an identity. So sometimes there are these no names, whatever, not really grounded spiritual people who may use this concept actually as a bypass to live as a human being. That I mean by too much detachment. So there's a middle ground between attachment and detachment to identities also, just to weave that into this discussion here and leave it for you to further contemplation. Identities as costumes. What a wonderful and smart way for the soul to experience life. I invite you to sit down after this podcast episode and reflect on which identities you have already lived with, which costumes you have already worn during your life so far. Maybe you want to draw a straight line, a horizontal line that represents the timeline of your life, and then list in sequence which identities you have lived. And often we don't remember all these identities, but very specific ones where we indulge into, for example, one hobby or one religion or something that is very dominant that you remember, to list it and to find the thread of your soul, the arc that encompasses all of these identities. It's like a red thread throughout your life. And you may have realizations from that. Like, this is why I had to go through this identity to be able to be now in this identity, or in these other words, to have first worn this costume, to be able and also to have the capacity to wear this new costume. And also in the other direction, forward looking, maybe you already have an anticipation of, this is my next version. This is my next identity, my next costume. Or maybe even further ahead. This is at the current point of time, my ideal costume. And if you are a creative, artistic being, you may also even want to draw something for it. Draw your ideal costume that you wear. Or make a collage of it. So I invite you to get creative today, because it really is a fun way to explore life for the soul, for your human being, and to see life through this lens of wearing costumes and not the rigidity of I have to shift my identity so I experience another reality, or for manifestation purposes. There are these more masculine driven aspects which are fine and which have their purpose and their validity, but also to invite this more softer feminine version of getting creative with that and seeing which costumes you have worn, you are currently wearing, and what you wish to wear in the future. And also which archetypes you find dominantly in your life that indicate a little bit what core themes and topics your soul is here to discover, rediscover, reclaim, remember, and activate in the collective. If you wish to dive deeper into the topic of identity shifting, I also have an online audio course and an identity framework on my Ecstatic Bliss portal. The link to that you find in the show notes. Just go to the link of the portal to Ecstatic Bliss, where I have all my offers. And there you find one guided journey through conscious identity shifting and a workbook for identity shifting that you can use as a template, which is, I call it Identity Framework, which is also part of Soulgasm, my main mentoring program, where we go into conscious identity shifting on the soul-based level, so soul-aligned identity shifting. Enjoy this playful approach to identity shifting and seeing how these identities act as costumes for your soul to experience and explore life. So much love and bliss, Soraya Ananda. If you feel the deep pull to walk this spiral more intimately, Soulgasm, my 6-month one-on-one sacred mentoring awaits you. This is a living embodiment of all I transmit here, but uniquely decoded for your soul. Enter the portal of Ecstatic Bliss and unleash your personal soulgasmic reality. All details and the link to book your vibrational match call are in the show notes.